Okay, so thank you guys so much for coming. So I just want to start just giving you a few details about the apps that I'm going to look at. The two apps are Logseq and Notion. And I got a couple items that I'm going to talk about with each of them. With Logseq, I'm going to talk about taking and retrieving notes, productivity, and flashcards. With Notion, I'm going to talk about lecture notes, using Notion as a presentation tool, and flashcards. Anything pique your interest among those topics?
Definitely the flashcard.
I know Lynn's here for the flashcard. I wanted to ask because every time I practice, I'm like almost right at time. So I want to make sure I talk about what you're interested in. Comparing these two apps as far as like functionality, Logseq can be used on a desktop or a phone app. It's free and open source. The data is going to be, any data that you enter into it is going to be stored on your device. And for somebody who is concerned about privacy, protection of your information, that might be a really important thing.
So you have to register or make an account with them?
No, you just download and you can start working. So some people like to use it on all their devices, so that can be an issue. If you're trying to sync the information among the devices, you can pay for a plan where they would sync. And there are other, like third-party apps that you can use to sync. My husband uses SyncThing. He has this app on all three. He has a work computer, home computer, and his phone, and is able to sync all three of them together. It uses a markdown format. I don't know how familiar you guys are with Markdown. I'm not super familiar with it, but it is the standard among writing on the web. And so if you could imagine, like when we use Word, there are all these buttons that we can click, bold, underline, and when you click those buttons, you're going to see the change in the text right away. With the markdown format, you're going to type things like bold, and you're not going to see it until it renders later. You're not going to see it right away. But it is a standard format, which is nice that you can export it to different places. If you decide at some point that you don't want to use this app anymore, there are other places you can import that information to. Notion has an account that you would create. You can use it in a browser, desktop app, or phone app. It's free for personal or individual use. And when you put your data in, this is stored in a cloud. And so it is going to be synced among all the devices that you use it. So comparing the markdown format, things like Word and Notion will have the like bolding, underlining, things like that. And I don't know if you've ever heard this term, WYSIWYG. I've heard it and I knew what it meant generally, but I didn't know that that was what you see is what you get. So I just learned that actually. So even though it is in this proprietary format, you can export your data into a markdown format as well. So you can get access to it. So that's just sort of comparing the uses of those apps. I'm going to take a look at Logseq in particular, talk about taking and retrieving notes. So the first screenshot I have here is from the journal. So I want to talk about that for a second. I'm just thinking about myself when I would take notes in a meeting. I might bring a notebook and have a tab for that department or committee or whatever it is and take notes in that area of my notebook. This app has a different perspective. It has a journal approach to taking notes. You take notes on the day in the journal, and then you have ways of referencing those notes to the places that you want. So it's organized. What the mentality is that sometimes you might be in a committee meeting or somewhere and you don't know where this idea fits. And, maybe I heard about it in this meeting, but it really might fit under these other categories as well. And so you might have trouble finding it later. I know I talked about it, but which meeting was it in? So which notebook did I put it in? So this idea of the journal is you type it on the day, and then you tag it with information that's important. So this is a screenshot. I tried to use the app to organize this presentation. So I had an idea of how I wanted to present. I did some brainstorming, just kind of typed it out. Then I sat for a minute. What are the important ideas that I wrote down? I have these different apps that I wanted to talk about. These are the key parts of those apps, and you can see not very well because of the screen projector, but this looks like a link if you were looking at this normally. So you just type hashtag and a word. It creates a page in the app, and then you're able to reference that again later on. And it puts every reference to that in your notes, any journal, any day, any page. Every time you tag it, it'll show up all in one place when you click the page. So it's nice. What I wrote in the title there is not only taking notes, but retrieving notes, trying to get to the notes that you've taken. So here's an example of one of those tags. So this is the Logseq page in my notes, and anytime that I've tagged that on a day or in a page or whatever shows up all in one place. I wanted to point out to you to-dos. You can, on any line in your journal, create a little to-do, and that to-do can be a page. So it's pulling all your to-dos from everything into one place. So I'm going to take a look at that in just a second. One thing that's really neat about this app is that it automatically creates a graph of the pages that you've created. So you can look at the graph and think about, well, how are these things that I'm talking about connected to each other? And this is really, I think, kind of interesting. You can pull the nodes around the screen and make it look in different shapes. And so this is at one point, one of the graphs, the top 3 nodes that you see there, Task Coach, Logseq, and Notion. These are the 3 apps I originally wanted to talk about. And when you look at what is connected to Task Coach, the only thing connected to Task Coach is productivity. It's not a note-taking app. And so when things are ending up on the cutting floor, the thing that doesn't make sense is what gets cut. So it's just kind of interesting to look at. Okay, so what if you didn't tag something that's an important idea? There's a search feature. So I just chose a word that I knew I didn't tag, but I probably talked about. Every time I talked about that in my notes gets pulled up here. So once again, retrieving the notes that you've taken.
So if you did that and then wanted to put a tag into those lines, could you do it in that space, or would you have to go on each one individually to tag it?
Don't know the answer to that. We could try it at the end. Okay, so then I have this to-do page I wanted to show you. So I said you can put all the to-dos together from different spaces of your notes. You can see I've got some to-dos from one of the journal dates. I made pages for flashcards and lecture notes, and at some point added to-dos to those specific pages. And then you can also schedule those to-dos for a date and time. A little bit of productivity and course planning. So I wanted to give you an idea of how I would course plan before and let's be honest now, still course plan this way, trying to get organized. It's a daily struggle. So, over the years, you find that as you're setting up your course, you make mistakes. Oh, I forgot to change that, or I forgot to do that. So I started taking a Word document and just writing down, what is the thing I forget?
My start of term Excel file.
Exactly. This is the start of the term file. And so it just got bigger and bigger. And, then it started collecting more information. Like I know that when I edit my Canvas shell, I'm going to edit a few links here and there. I know I'm going to have to put smarter proctoring in, and there's a language that I use in the smarter proctoring tests all the time. So let's put it all in one place. So it's been working well for me, but maybe it can be a little bit better and a little bit more organized. So in Logseq, you can make templates. So I can make templates. I've got a template here that I made for the start of the semester. So when I'm just getting started with a new semester, I can tag a page for the new semester with these to-dos and schedule it. I can make a little form here with what's the information I need to make my syllabus, to enter in Canvas. So I'm not trying to guess about what I need to know. I know exactly what I need to know to get started. Here is one. This is me taking that document I showed you, all the things I need to do to get ready for the semester, and just trying to make it a little bit organized in the template. One thing I wanted to point out here, do you see the 23 seconds on the right there? Now, I don't use this personally, but you can change there are 3 different phases of your to-do. It can be to-do, doing, and done. If you change your to-do to doing, it starts to track time for that task. So if you were somebody who needed to know how long does it take me to do these things and actually come back, I just come back here like every few days and then okay, which ones did I do? So time tracking is not really helpful if you do it that way. But if you have it open all the time and you're marking it as you go, then that might be a helpful thing. Another, you can store that frequently used email language, that email that you reply all the time and say the same thing. Instead of typing it out, just pull it from Logseq where it's stored in there. So this is how I might start the semester. Create a page with what classes I'm teaching that semester. A page for each class. Then I can add a template to the page, my course planning template. Then all the to-dos show up and I can schedule a time, and I've got all my to-dos in one place. All right, so I wanted to talk about flashcards. I can't talk about flashcards without mentioning our National Science Foundation grant. I took this screenshot from the flashcard video, benefits of flashcards, particularly active recall and spaced repetition. I got really excited about flashcards and Notion and Logseq with spaced repetition. Logseq actually has it built into the app, flashcards with spaced repetition. So it just comes stock like that. So let me show you in Logseq how you can type pound card, and it's going to turn that line into the front of the flashcard, and then you have your subheading underneath will be the back side of the flashcard. And I just wanted to show you as well that it does math language. Now it uses LaTeX, which you have to know how to write it out. I mean, it's not like an editor like Word where you can just click the buttons, but it is capable of that. And once you have it typed out, here's what it looks like. and the nice fraction forms and our typical math fonts. Now, if you're reviewing the flashcards, there's a page that's there all the time for flashcards. And when you click on it, it'll present you with whatever flashcards are coming up. There's the bottom there, show answers. And when you ask it to show the answers, there's a question at the bottom. Forgotten, took a while to recall, or remembered. And then this is going to insert the card back into your viewing at different intervals of time. It's a nice built-in feature to Logseq. Students using this for personal use, they can, as they're taking notes, make those flashcards. Any thoughts or questions for me? Okay, so then the other app.
Can you share?
Can I share?
Share, like, can students, if they make a flashcard and another student, can they share flashcards?
I don't know that yet. Logseq, I'm a little bit more green. I've been using it maybe about 4 months, so I really haven't ventured into the flashcards as much as you're going to see in Notion. Like, I really did a deep dive into the flashcards with Notion. So let's take a look at lecture notes. Okay, lecture notes before. Would make a notebook when I'm starting to teach a class. Take pieces of notebook paper, write down formulas, definitions, examples that I want to cover in class. This is for my first time teaching calculus, and it's actually way more detailed than my typical notes would be because I was nervous about teaching it. So that's what my notes look like before. I started using Notion, and here's an example of that same lecture you saw on pencil and paper. And let me zoom in just a little bit here. So this is a sample. I just wanted to show you a few things that I like about the notes. This toggle feature that it has, being able to collapse pieces of information. For me, it really unlocks my creativity when preparing the notes because I can focus on the big picture, look at the main ideas of the lecture, and then open up the toggle and dive into that particular section. So it's really, really helpful. I'm going to talk about Notion as a presentation tool as well. I'm using it right now. I use it for my lectures as well, but I can do the same thing with my students, have all the toggles closed so they can see the big picture and then step by step go through the lecture. This block that you see here with a little light bulb, this is called a call-out box. It's used to highlight formulas, definitions, just making something important, tips or tricks or whatever. You can highlight that information. It's kind of hard to see in this dark mode. I've got some pictures here that I can embed into the notes. What else? We've got math writing. So you can see it rendered very nicely there. If I click on it, you can see what the LaTeX that I needed to type out in order to get it to render that way. I've got columns of information, taking advantage of the space on the page. You can have bulleted notes, numbered notes, outline format. You can make this almost however you want to make it. Those are, let's see, I gotta hit back. Okay, so that's just a sample of the notes. Sorry. out of place there. Okay, just some basic ideas to know about Notion. Your workspace is going to be a page, and then you fill that page with blocks of information. And the blocks of information come in all different categories, headings, pages, to-dos. You saw math blocks, bulleted list, number list, toggle list, quotes, dividers. These are just the basic ones, and there are all kinds of other ones available as well. For the pages you can think of as folders, but it's also a workspace as well. So here's how I've got my notes organized. I have a page titled Course Notes, and then it's a page of pages. And then I have, if you click on one of the pages, it's another page of pages, all the different sections. And then when you click on a section, you have the notes for that section. But the difference is that it's not just a folder, it's a workspace as well. So I don't have to have just pages of pages. I can fill it with all other types of blocks as well. Math equations in Notion. You can have two types of math equations. You can have them inline or block. And when I first started using Notion, the inline equation was not an option. So although I was really feeling very creative with putting my notes on Notion, there was just no way it was going to work if I couldn't do inline equations. Luckily, shortly after I started using it, they released that feature, and then I just went insane.
Take off from there.
Exactly. So here's a sample just so you can see the difference between inline versus block. Inline, you have an equation here and it only takes up that little bit of space, versus a block equation, it's going to take up the space, the width. This happens to be in a column, so it's only taking up that small width we see here. But if I had that like at the top of the page, it would go all the way across from left to right. So it's going to take up that whole block of space. And once again, that's the LaTeX that you have to type to get that to show up. Call out blocks and columns. I just wanted to show you a sample. We've already looked at those really. This is really interesting, synced blocks. So let's say you have a topic that shows up in multiple courses, or maybe one is in a prerequisite course and you want to reference. These synced blocks, you can mark something as synced and you can edit it in one place and it edits it in both places instead of having these separate copies and having to update it if you find a mistake or want to expound on that topic. Copying and sharing. I'm using this for my course notes, but there are so many uses out there that people have found for Notion. This person has made a template that they're calling Budget Manager, and they are actually charging $5 for people to buy it. Somebody made a Kanban board, if you want to do to-dos, or I've seen Kanban boards for big companies who are developing software. It goes from phase to phase, and you can move the different cards there to the different phases. There's a college planner. Some of these are free as well. So there's lots of uses. You can copy somebody else's template, modify it, and figure out what works for you. I mentioned exporting. Notion can export to the Markdown format, but it also can export to a PDF format. So originally I was making the lecture notes just for me to display during class, or really just to keep me on topic, to keep me progressing through the lecture how I wanted to. And then students kept asking me, can I get a copy of that? And so I would export it, and the pictures would show up and cover the whole page, and it was a big mess. So I spent a lot of time going and formatting it so that when I exported it, it looked in a really nice format for the students. And this is something that I hand out to them during the lectures as well, so they can follow along with my lecture, filling in the blank on these different parts. It does some of this automatically, has the page heading at the top, and the bottom left, it puts the title as well, and it automatically does the page numbers, so I don't have to do any of that.
I hate page numbers anymore.
Yeah, and it's, I'll be totally honest, this is not the easiest process to try to get Notion to look nice in a PDF. I'm kind of in a place where I'm trying to figure out how I'm gonna move forward with it, because sometimes I'm now making decisions about how to write the notes just for how I'm going to print them, and how I want it as a presentation is different from how I want it printed. And so I might have to do a little bit of separating of, like I have it saved here this way and I have it saved here this way. So I don't know, I'm at a crossroads of figuring out what I want to do with that. So as a presentation tool, I've got a screenshot here of what it would look like when I'm presenting to my students. I use my laptop like I'm using right now. And on one side, I have Notion up with the outline of the class. On the other side, I have a whiteboard. I'm using Microsoft Whiteboard. That's just kind of how I go through the class with that information. I called out the toggle. It's really my favorite thing about this. The images, you may have seen already that when you embed the images into Notion, you get to keep the original size of the image. So even if it's displaying one size and printed on the notes one size, during the lecture, if I'm using it as a presentation tool, I can click on that image, make it bigger, and the whole class can see it quite well. The other thing that's really nice is because I'm using Notion, I can copy that image quickly, put it on my whiteboard, and mark it up to discuss whatever we're talking about with that image. You can embed links and store files that you want to use. So I've got a Desmos tool here I can link to and work with my students. This is a graph file that I made to make some pictures and also to demonstrate the tangent line for these graphs. So if I didn't remember that that was in my notes or forgot where the file is on my computer, it's right here. I can download it and use it during my lecture. And then I also like that I've got all my notes in the same place. So if a question comes up during class that's referencing something that we did last week or something that's in a different course, I can quickly find it in my notes and be able to answer the students' questions. So flashcards. How are we doing on time? Okay. So I mentioned earlier that you can copy other people's templates. So I was on YouTube and I found this YouTuber, Connor. He's a medical student in the UK, and he has this video about using Notion for spaced repetition. Of course, I got really excited. Flashcards, spaced repetition, Notion. So I checked it out. He has a template that he shared, and I've got a couple screenshots for it to take a look at what he's done. So he has put in Notion a database. I didn't mention that already. You can put tables and databases, and we're not just talking about Excel files. You can relate data like one table to another table. These are relational tables, relational databases. So he put a database in his Notion, and there are a couple different views of it. This is the gallery view, and so this is the view that looks like your typical flashcard. You've got like the front of the flashcard here. So that's today's gallery. Then the other view of his database, let's take a look at it because this gives us the details about what he's done. This is all items, so this kind of looks like a spreadsheet, and you see the name of the flashcard there, and he's added properties to that flashcard. The properties he's added are level, date wrong, and with those two pieces of information, he has made a formula. The last column that you see there, next, do you see at the top it's got that sigma? In Notion, that means it's a calculated column, a calculated property, rather than one that you designate. So the level, you choose it, the date wrong, you choose it, but next is calculated based on those two things. So what he did is he made a formula. Let's see, got the formula here. So this is the formula for that, and he's got date add, we're looking at the top, date add, and he's taking the date the student got it wrong and adding some power of 2 based on the level. So if the student chooses level 1, they're going to review that flashcard the same day. If they choose level 2, they're going to review it again the next day. So using those powers of 2. So I'm blown away. I'm like so excited to see this in the video. And so I copy it, and one last thing about it, in the gallery view, in order to make this work well, you want to sort it by next so that your flashcards show up in order of what you're supposed to review next. So, as I said, I was really excited about this, but if I think about how you would use this if you were a student, I really think that Connor's template is more for a student working independently, making their own flashcards. When they get done studying for the test, then they kind of like never look at it again, which doesn't really work for what I want to use it for. So what I want to use it for is making a deck of flashcards that I can reuse over and over again. So if I want to reuse it over and over again, I'm just imagining having to like reset the date on every single flashcard. So it's relevant for my students. And then the other thing is, if I've created a deck for my class for the whole semester, there are going to be tons of flashcards in that deck that are not, my student is not ready to look at yet. So I wanted to take Connor's template, I copied it, and I started to make a bunch of changes to it. So here's what that all view looks like now. I've added some tags. This is for being able to sort the cards for whatever I want to look at. If I want to look at only cards from test 1, I can do that. Only week 1 or week 2 or whatever I'm interested in studying at the moment. I've also added this week 1. The purpose of that was for me to calculate this column date introduced. So I need 2 pieces of information to do that. I need the semester start date and whatever week. And with that information, I'm able to calculate. You can see I've got date add, semester start date, and I'm adding a multiple of 7, and it automatically populates. So new semester comes, all I've got to do is change that start date, and now all the cards have the right introduced date on them. So it took me a while to figure out how to do that, but I finally figured out how to make a separate table which controls that semester start date. As I said before, I didn't want to add semester start date as a property to every single card and then have to go change it. I wanted to change it in one place and have it work for the whole database. This last one here, I just wanted to point it out to you how it works. This last row here, I changed week number to 5, and the date introduced is now after the date that it's meant to be reviewed. Or sorry, the date I reviewed it. So take a look. you've got confidence level 1, date reviewed on the 24th. If your confidence level is 1, you're supposed to review that day or the next day. And because I've set this date introduced, now the next time I'm going to see that is on the date introduced instead, because the students are not prepared for that card yet. They're not supposed to be seeing that until week 5. So this allows you to only present the students with the cards that they're prepared for. This is the gallery view now. It's got some things that I added here, tags with the week, the date, next date, confidence level. So it's not hidden from the students. They know that they're studying something that's relevant for test 1, relevant for the final exam. So how are the students going to use the flashcards? Well, they would have to sign up for Notion. They're going to follow my template link, and you can duplicate it, and that's going to copy my flashcard set into their Notion account. They're going to set the start date of the semester, and then they can get started reviewing the upcoming flashcards right away. The first card is the one on the upper left of the deck. Once they review the card, the information is in the bottom here. They review the card and then they decide how confident are they. They can change today's date and set their confidence on that card. It's going to recalculate that next property and shuffle it in the deck in its new appropriate spot. Here are the filters that I've added to the card. This one I added because let's say there are 100 cards in the deck. I don't want all 100 cards showing here. Even if they're putting the ones that they're not supposed to see for 5 weeks or whatever, it's going to be at the bottom, but I don't want it to be there at all. So I put that filter so it's only going to show the cards that are relevant for the next week. They can filter by confidence level, only looking at the cards maybe with low confidence. They can filter by a specific week. This would be really good for my students because I give weekly quizzes. So they can look at the topics that are focused for that particular quiz. They can filter by focusing on a specific test. And then just recently, I figured out how I could get my students involved because you can make the cover photo the front of the index card. It's a picture. And then I made the inside of the card the other side of the index card. So I've just started this. I've got my students with an extra credit assignment every week. They choose from a list of flashcards they can make and make the front and back. They take pictures of it and upload it to Canvas. And then I'm adding it to my deck so that I'm not making every flashcard. They can make the flashcards. Yeah. So I put in some information. You guys have access to the presentation with the paper that I gave you. You can scan it. And if you're interested in either of the apps, I picked out some of the topics that I talked about today: equations in Notion, making templates in Logseq, and just let me know if you have questions.
I love that. So this is your first semester using this?
The flashcards, yes.
Yeah.
I'm just starting.
So you're in week 3.
Yes. In week 3, yeah.
Nice. And they're like it.
So I put out a survey. Only 2 of them answered my survey. The feedback that I got, for instance, here, this picture can show you. I wasn't going to spend time making all these cover photos, so I made that little limits picture and I just uploaded it from all of them. So the feedback from one student was, it'd be nice if the title was the same as the cover photo. And since I made the flashcards for week 1 myself, to try to see how it works and to get it going, their extra credit for the week 1 flashcards is to make the cover photo. And so they don't have to do the content, they just have to make the picture. When they submit it, I'll start changing those. So that was the one piece of information, feedback. The survey had like, would you use this for our class? Would you use it for another class? And it was mostly yeses on liking it and wanting to use it. And the second survey just in the comments said it's perfect. So we didn't have any suggestions or changes for it. But it's early on, so we'll
Do the
see.
survey again in like 4 weeks or something.
Yeah.
And again, harp on it again after the first test.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Then you'll have a few more people interested.
Mm-hmm. So those papers that you see, those are the a couple samples of different notes that I exported from Notion.
You run these off for your students,
Mhm.
and they haven't said anything.
They have not said a word to me.
So they made me start sending mine over to the bookstore.
Mm-hmm.
And bookstore screws them up every semester, and it's like I got so fed up this term, I just put them online and told the students they had to print them. And it's some are trying to take notes by hand. It's like
Yeah. Well, they haven't said anything to me yet, so we'll see if it does happen. But so far, I'm able to send them in every week, and they've been fine with it. So, what do you guys think? What should I do next with these flashcards or these apps or whatever?
I need to play around with it. I like how the flashcards work. Like I said, I showed you what I'm doing,
Mhm.
making them write their own. I basically, in a Word PDF file, write this on the front of the card, write this on the back of the card, and make them create their own card. But yeah, you have to give them sample ones because we learned in that.
The grant,
The grant,
National Science.
They do not know how to make, they don't understand, they make them too hard.
I don't
you
understand
know?
the purpose,
Yeah, so I give them sample ones. It needs to be something that you don't need paper and pencil to work on. That it's what would be the next step, or a formula, what's.
Mhm.
But
Or something to memorize.
Yeah.
Like in the calculus class, we're talking about finding continuity analytically. And there is a theorem in the book that says if you know the domain, you'll know the continuity of all these different types of functions. Well, they don't know what a rational function is or an exponential function, and they don't know how to find the domain of that. So there's all this algebra stuff that they should
Right.
know already. So they're making flashcards
Yeah,
for those topics.
very cool. I'm impressed.
Thank you guys.
Yeah.
You're
That's
great.
good stuff.
I mean, honestly, it has changed the way that I teach completely. We were at home during the pandemic, so this is what I did. I took my pencil and paper notes and I put it into Notion and recorded all my lectures, started having, storing those in Canvas. Honestly, I feel like I'm a content manager now and not a
teacher.
not a teacher, because I'm like, oh man, there's a mistake in that. I gotta fix it here, and I gotta fix it there, and now I gotta change the video.
Off your
And-
Facebook.
So, but it's exciting because I feel more flexible than I've ever felt, and it's 15 years in now, and I feel invigorated to do this now.
That's great.
We always need to keep changing and learning. Keep
Yes.
us excited about it.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Well, and to be so, technologically connected, like the students are really going to appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I think as an adjunct, I'm like, I'm not going to get that done. Yay, I'm going to applaud you.
Yeah.
Great, well, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Is it time for the next one?
Yeah. Have to go down and set up for Caroline's.
That's right.
Oh, what's she talking about?
She's doing is the gamification, all her manipulatives.
Oh,
Back, I think it's like back to our roots or something. She